Welcome to another episode of Mexican in the Kitchen. For chilaquiles, we need some tortilla chips. In this case, we're going to make them ourselves, and for that I'm using these tortillas. Usually I think they're a bit dry, they're not the nicest quality, but that's exactly when you want to use the tortillas for chilaquiles. So I'm just going to cut these into triangles. I'm going to do this with a sharp, heavy knife, but of course if you want to do it also with some kitchen scissors, you can do it as well, whatever works for you. For making tortilla chips, a lot of people cut a tortilla in 4, so you get 4 big triangles, but I find it a bit hard to eat, especially if you want to make chilaquiles. So I'm just going to cut it in 8 pieces, just like if you were cutting a pizza. So in that way, we'll get smaller tortilla chips and it will be easier to eat. A few weeks ago, I uploaded a video making green chilaquiles, and I call that the lazy version because I use store-bought tortilla chips, store-bought salsa, and then I just adapted it a bit. But in this case, we're making everything from scratch and they will be perfect. Now that we have the tortillas, we need to fry them. For that, I'm going to use some canola oil on a pot. This is on a 3 or 4 out of 6, so medium high fire. I don't usually check for the oil temperature because tortillas don't take very long, and also you can tell by the color if they're ready or not. The way I make sure the oil is ready is just dip a tortilla strip, and then if you see the bubbles forming, then it's ready. At that point, I will just throw a handful of my tortilla triangles. Of course, it depends if you have a deep fryer, you can maybe do everything at once, but in this case I only have a small pot and I'm just going to do a few batches of them. Make sure to keep an eye on your tortilla chips, because these will be ready quite soon, and very quickly they might get burned, so just keep an eye, and whenever they're ready, just take them out quickly. In this case, my tortilla chips were ready in about 3 to 4 minutes. The way to tell if tortilla chips are ready or not is the color. You have to take them out before they become too dark, and the problem is, if they become too dark, they might become a bit bitter, and at some point, they become a bit too bitter to be eaten. You have to take them out when they start getting dark. If you take them a bit too early, they might be a bit chewy still. If you take them a bit too late, they will still get a bit darker after you take them out, so they might get overcooked. So that's why I recommend that you throw a couple tortilla chips, just fry them, make sure you keep an eye on them, check the color, take them out, make sure that's exactly the texture and the color you like, and then try with the whole batch. After cooking, I'm throwing them in this strainer where I'm going to let them drip all the excess oil they might have, let them cool down for a bit, and then I will take them to a different container. At this point, they are perfect. They taste really good. When they're recently made, I recommend that you try a couple. And if you want to use them for something else than chilaquiles, and you just want some tortilla chips, then put them in a bowl, add a bit of salt, mix them, and you have a perfect homemade tortilla chip. Once we're ready, I'm going to throw a bit more tortillas and fry them and repeat the process. Now we need to make our sauce. For that I have a pot with some water on a 4 out of 6, so medium high fire. Water is already hot, and I'm adding half a kilo of tomato, half a large onion or 1 small one, 2 garlic cloves, 2 Guajillo chilies that I have already cleaned. I removed the seeds and removed the stems. This time, I'm going to make them not spicy at all, but if you want some spiciness, you could also add some chile de arbol or chile serrano or whatever chili you prefer to make it spicier. I'm going to let the ingredients boil for about 15 minutes. I want to get the tomatoes to become quite soft. After a while, you will notice the tomatoes are quite soft, the peel is coming off by itself, and this is exactly what we want. We can take our ingredients and take them to our blender. At this point, we can start adding the ingredients to our blender. As always, we're going to start with the tomatoes because they have the most water or the most liquid, and that way our blender will blend everything way easier. Then we can add the onion, the garlic, and at the end the chilies. At this point, we can add some salt. Some people might even add a chicken stock cube or a bit of powder. I'm also adding a bit of the water where we boiled everything. The chilies were there, so there's a bit of flavor, and it will make our blending easier. Anyway, if the sauce is a bit too liquid, we can just boil it for a bit longer and reduce it. Usually if I use some dried chilies, I would strain the sauce. But in this case, because we didn't use that many, I'm going to not strain it. So we want to make sure that it's really nicely blended. I'm going to let it be there for a couple minutes, make sure it's really smooth sauce, and then we can continue. I have a large pan on a 4 out of 6, so medium high fire. I'm going to add a splash of canola oil. This is not yet super hot, and that's because I'm going to add my sauce in here. And because it's a liquid, we don't want the pan and the oil to be too hot, otherwise it will start just jumping everywhere. But we add it here. We want to let it boil for a bit. I'm going to rinse my blender. Just make sure I take everything with some water and just put it in there. I want to let it boil there for a few minutes, at least 5-10 minutes. Usually I would use a handful of fresh epazote. Epazote is a herb we use a lot in Mexico. Here in Finland I only get the dried one, so I'm going to use a bunch of that. It's really nice, gives a really nice flavor to the sauce. If you don't have it, you can also add a handful of coriander or parsley depending on what you like. I think either of those options will give a really nice touch to the sauce. In the last chilaquiles recipe I made, I will pour the sauce on top of the tortilla chips on the plate because I want them crunchy. But in this case, I'm going to add my tortilla chips in here. This is how my dad used to make them, and I think it gives a really nice texture. I know, for example, my mom prefers them when they're really crunchy, recently served. This is completely up to you, whatever you prefer. I'm going to mix these very carefully because I don't want to crush all the tortilla chips and make just like a paste. I want them still to be a tortilla chip, but I want them to be completely covered in sauce. You could also take sauce and tortilla chips into a bowl and just toss them around. That would be also a really good way to get this mixed. Once our tortilla chips are covered with sauce, then our chilaquiles are ready. I'm having my chilaquiles with some steak, some refried beans. I'm going to top them with some fresh onion. Usually I would use some queso fresco, but in Tampere you cannot really find it very easily, so I'm going to add some salad cheese. It's a bit of like a feta, very similar to the fresh cheese you would use. I'm adding a bit of creme fraiche or sour cream. It feels like we're missing some color, so of course we're going to add some avocado. It's very common to use in Mexican food and it goes perfectly well with chilaquiles. This is how I make red chilaquiles. This is a beautiful dish, really easy to make. Usually people have it in many different places. It's available everywhere because you make use of the old tortillas from the last day. They might be not so fresh and maybe it's not so nice to keep them in a taco or something else. So you just deep fry them, make a new dish. Quite common, quite easy. You can play with the sauce. Depending on the kind of sauce you make, you can make your own recipe, add, remove ingredients. You can make them red, you can make them green, you can maybe add some different kind of chilies, play with it. It's a very beautiful dish. You can serve it with maybe some shredded chicken. You can also serve it with a fried egg on top. In this case, because it's a lunch and I'm not having it as a breakfast, I added the steak on the side. It goes really well. Some refried beans, you can have some bread on the table, really nice. So I hope you like it. I hope you try it at home. Press like, subscribe, comment, share it with your friends, activate the bell, all those kind of things, and see you in the next one.